Alarming new video taken from a Biden press conference is highlighting voters' concerns about the president's age and mental capacity. Let's take a look.
There is some movement, and I don't want to, well, maybe choose my words. There's some movement. There's been a response from there's been a response from the opposition, but yes, I'm sorry, from Hamas, but it seems to be a little over the top. We're not sure where it is. There's a continuing negotiation right now.
Polling from NBC News finds 3/4 of voters, including half of Democrats, say they have concerns about Joe Biden's mental and physical health. Democrats, however, continue to blame the president's lukewarm standing with voters on messaging and communications issues. Now, after Biden won South Carolina's primary with an anemic 4% of voters coming out, DNC Chair Jamie Harrison blamed poor turnout on disinformation, telling outlet Notice, quote, "I think there's a lot of disinformation out there. There are a lot of folks who don't want this president for whatever reason, and I think some foreign and some domestic, they don't want the record to be straight in terms of what the president has done and accomplished." Russia, Russia, Russia. Meanwhile, Biden won Nevada's Democratic primary yesterday with 89% of the vote, though Biden's challengers, Dean Phillips and Marianne Williamson, did not actually make the ballot. In other positive news for the president, special counsel Robert Hur has completed his investigation into the classified documents found at a number of Biden-associated locations, including the garage at his Wilmington home. No charges expected there. I don't think that's going to matter as much as these repeated video clips of Biden painfully struggling to answer basic questions, to recall anecdotes and say there was nothing substantive he had to say there. The negotiations with Hamas are ongoing and we're hopeful, but there's nothing concrete. That's all he had to say there. And he struggled through it in a way that makes you uncomfortable, in a way that, again, I think I said this yesterday, calls to mind elderly relatives and friends and neighbors and, not wanting them to have to exhaust themselves because it's embarrassing for them and it's uncomfortable. And he's the president of the United States. It's reminiscent of Dianne Feinstein and some of what Mitch McConnell is going through. And John Fetterman, right after his really serious medical issues that he has thankfully seemingly fully recovered from.
Regrettably, if this were a Fetterman situation, I think Democrats would be much better positioned because people recover from strokes, as is evident by how spirited John Fetterman is in climbing to the roof and draping himself within an Israeli flag. I don't think we'll see Joe Biden climbing to any roofs, waving any kind of flags aggressively or with vigor anytime soon. That entire press conference, obviously that's the clip that has gone viral, but his energy level and general tone throughout that entire press conference was very sluggish and difficult to watch. You heard him get an assist from the audience to come up with the name Hamas. And as we were talking about a little bit off camera, the idea of mixing up words or, saying France when you mean Germany, or and then correcting yourself immediately, that's the kind of verbal slip up that we all engage in. But the slowed down pace, the clear difficulty cognitively in remembering what you were talking about in the first instance, and the fact that it's now happening repeatedly, I think is a concern. We talked about another clip that went viral earlier this week, and I think it might be worth just playing it for the audience again so they can remember what we're talking about.
People have pled guilty. Right after I was elected, I went to what they call a G7 meeting, all the NATO leaders. It was in the south of England. And I sat down and I said, "America's back." And Mitterrand from from France looked at me and said, how long are you back for?
It just gets so uncomfortable to watch. Yeah, as you pointed out, the confusing Germany for France quickly and then correcting it, that's no big deal. We all do that. But he was talking about someone, the wrong political figure, and then he didn't correct that. That went on and on. Someone who had been dead for years by the time the meeting he's referring to took place. Of course, Joe Biden has been in office, in Congress so long, I'm thinking, well, maybe he did meet him back then, but he's referring to the G7. That's the leaders of the countries. That happened when he was president. There was no Mitterrand at the time.
Right. So now some Democrats are going to say, well, Donald Trump has gaffes and slip-ups, but they're not covered in the same way. Most recently, there was the moment on the campaign trail where he attributed to Nikki Haley actions at the Capitol on January 6th that were attributable to Nancy Pelosi, which I would argue is a similar kind of substantive confusion, not just mixing up your words or having a verbal tick at that in a way that's very excusable and common. And maybe there is something to be said about the fact that even though it does seem like Joe Biden is in worse decline as Donald Trump, it's not a good idea to have either of these, almost octogenarians on the ballot. But for the Democrats, this has become a liability in a way that for whatever reason, it just has not for Donald Trump. And the question is, when are people like DNC Chair Jamie Hairston going to wake up and stop saying that people's concern about Joe Biden's mental and physical health is because of Russian disinformation and take responsibility for the fact that the Democratic Party has thrown everything, including preserving democracy, in their own words, behind someone who is now in such an obvious state of decline?
Yeah, it is not surprising at all to see them turn to that well, the Russian disinformation well. Again, one of the most widely overhyped, exaggerated claims ever made, going back to 2016, for the extent of Russian influence, their ability to manipulate you, to manipulate you on social media, has now been debunked over and over again. A small number of accounts, yes, directed by Russia, not correctly targeted at the right people, not making a splash compared with the amount of money the campaigns themselves spent on messaging on social media. It just became a cope for Hillary to say, I lost because Russia was out to get me. Now they have turned to that well over and over and over again. And on this issue, there's no confusion coming from Russia. And Russia's not making people think Biden is old. He is old.
Right.
He's the oldest person to be president, and he shows it. It looks that way, and absolutely fair to go after Trump for the same thing. Trump is also showing his age to some degree. He makes verbal slip-ups too. Frankly, he's just kind of incoherent and ranty when he talks. He keeps his energy level up higher, which covers for a lot, and is fending off some of these same charges. And you say that's unfair, and he's old too, and he's out of it. Frankly, there are a lot of people in America who don't think either are very appealing candidates and wish there were other choices. So that's fine, but it is absolutely more of a liability for Biden, and it's not partisan or ideological to observe that. Democrats are observing that too. They are very nervous about this guy being the candidate. I would be nervous about him debating Trump, which he eventually has to do, right?
Right.
I wouldn't want to debate Trump if I were him because, again, and I'm not trying to say Trump is some rhetorical genius or master of the debate stage, but that kind of incoherence where Biden loses his train of thought and can't recover it, I haven't seen that to the same degree from Donald Trump. And this seems to be getting worse by the day for Biden. The debates are still a couple months off. Now,
to be clear, as you just alluded to, there was this back and forth where a couple of days ago, Trump said, I'd like to debate him now because we should debate for the good of the country. And Biden responded, this was on Monday during a stop in Nevada, immediately, well, if I were him, I'd want to debate me too. He's got nothing else to do. So he seems to be accepting that challenge. But I remember back in 2020 when there was already discussion about his cognitive state right in advance of that last debate between Bernie and Biden. And wondering if, this was Bernie's last opportunity. Yep. Obviously, I was working for the campaign and was rooting for Bernie Sanders to pull one out, and being frankly kind of surprised and disheartened by how competent, forceful, energetic, and capable Biden was at that debate. And
I was like, well, he did a really good job.
He really came out of I don't know where all that energy came from. I haven't seen much of that since then. Yeah. And I do wonder, do they have tricks up their sleeves? Can he spend a week getting well rested and doing whatever else it takes for him to put on a show when it matters? And then will that be enough? I don't know. I wouldn't count him out because, again, I had low expectations 4 years ago and he came through. But he's only gotten older in those intervening 4 years. And so I think we're all waiting with bated breath to see what happens.
If there's another one of these videos every couple days between now and the election day, I don't know, man. I don't know. But we'll see about that. More Rising right after this.